All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most brilliant, most chaotic, and frankly, most difficult satires ever written, Jonathan Swift's A Tale of a Tub. For over 300 years, this book has been a puzzle for readers. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain on its single greatest and most hidden joke. So let's start with a crazy thought. What if the very person telling you the story, the narrator who's supposed to be your guide, what if he's the real punchline? That is the secret key to unlocking this entire masterpiece. Okay, so when you first open the book, what you see is this really bizarre, kind of fairy tale-like story. We got to start there with the first layer of this thing, the story of three brothers. The setup sounds pretty simple, right? You've got a father, and he leaves his three sons, Peter, Martin, and Jack, these incredible, perfect coats. And his will has one single crystal clear rule. Do not, under any circumstances, add anything to or take anything away from these coats. Ever. I think you can guess where this is going. Of course, Swift isn't actually writing a story about fashion. This whole thing is a religious allegory. You see, the coats, they represent the pure, original form of Christianity. The father is basically God, or Christ. And what the brothers do to those coats, well, that's where the satire gets its bite. Here's the decoder ring. Peter, who represents the Roman Catholic Church, just can't help himself. He starts adding all this gold lace and ribbons and fancy decorations, all symbols for the complex rituals and ceremonies the church added over the centuries. Then you've got Jack. He's the extreme Protestant, and he gets so furious about all of Peter's additions that he tries to rip them all off, and in his rage, he just shreds the coat to pieces. And then there's Martin, who's kind of Swift's hero here. He represents the Church of England, and he tries to carefully, moderately, just remove the extra decorations, trying to find that sensible middle ground. Okay, so that story is a pretty clever takedown of religious history. But get this, that's not even the main event. It's almost a distraction, because Swift has a much, much bigger target in his sights. Let's peel back that next layer. As you're reading about the brothers, there's this other voice that keeps jumping in, this narrator. And he goes on these long, rambling tangents, talking about how brilliant he is, about the latest trends in literature, about, well, everything but the story. So the big question is, who is this guy, and why won't he just shut up and tell the tale? And here it is. This is the central trick of the whole book. You have to understand that there are two authors at work here. There's Jonathan Swift, the real author, who is brilliant, sophisticated, and deeply conservative. And then there's the character he created to tell the story, this vain, shallow, trend-obsessed modern author. This narrator isn't Swift. He's a persona, a mask, and he is the real butt of the joke. Yeah, you don't have to just take my word for it. The critic Gardner D. Stout nails it right here. Every time the narrator praises his own genius, or uses some trendy, nonsensical jargon, or gets lost in a totally pointless story about himself, he is performing the exact kind of intellectual garbage that Swift absolutely despised. So, by inventing this foolish narrator, Swift is doing something much bigger than just making fun of a few bad writers. No, he's using this guy as a weapon to attack the entire intellectual spirit of his age, a spirit he just called modernity. Now, for Swift, modernity was not a good thing. At all. To him, it was like a cultural disease. It was this arrogant, dangerous obsession with everything new. This belief that you could just toss out centuries of ancient wisdom for the latest half-baked idea. He saw it causing chaos everywhere, in religion, in science, in literature. And guess who's a huge fan of all of it? Our narrator. He absolutely loves it. He gushes about these fanatical preachers who claim God talks directly to them. He's fascinated by the weirdest, most bizarre experiments from the new scientists. And he is the perfect example of a Grub Street hack, a commercial writer who thinks that more words equals more genius. Every single thing he praises is something Swift is savagely mocking. I mean, listen to this totally absurd quote from our narrator. He's trying to give a modern explanation for religious inspiration, and he reduces it to being gassy. It's Swift's brutal way of mocking religious enthusiasm by having his foolish narrator championing a theory that turns divine revelation into a bad case of indigestion. And somehow it gets even more shocking. Here, the narrator is trying to sound like a detached, modern scientific observer. He reports on seeing a woman literally skinned alive, with the absolutely idiotic understatement that it altered her person for the worse. It's horrifying, and that's the point. This is Swift attacking a scientific mindset that gets so lost in the gory, physical details that it completely misses the humanity, the morality, the sheer horror of what's happening. So, as you can imagine, with a joke this complicated, this layered, a lot of people just didn't get it. They read the narrator's insane opinions and thought they were Swift's opinions, and that caused a huge scandal. The book first came out anonymously in 1704, and the reaction was explosive. People were outraged. In fact, it took 6 full years for Swift to finally add a preface to the 5th edition, called an apology, where he basically had to sit his readers down and explain the joke. And this was a serious problem. We're talking about powerful church officials who thought Swift was attacking all of Christianity, not just its corruptions. This wasn't just about bad reviews. The controversy actually damaged his career within the church. He had to step in and say, hey, everyone, all that offensive stuff, that was my idiotic character speaking, not me. But here is the most brilliant, ironic twist of all. The fact that so many modern readers couldn't tell the difference between the genius author and his idiotic narrator was the ultimate proof of Swift's entire point. Their shallow, literal-minded reading of his book was a perfect demonstration of the very intellectual laziness he was making fun of in the first place. The reaction to the book proved the book was right. Now, Swift wasn't just pulling this trick out of thin air. This technique of creating a foolish persona to expose foolishness, well, he was drawing on a very long and powerful tradition of satire. He was using a classic move. Look at the humanist Erasmus. Almost 200 years earlier, he wrote a book called In Praise of Folly, where he created a character named Folly who goes around praising all the foolish things people do. It's the exact same game plan. You create a fool to praise foolishness, and in doing so, you reveal just how foolish it really is. And that's really the heart of it. A Tale of a Tub is not a book you can just passively read. It's a workout. It's an active challenge. Swift forces you, the reader, to do the hard work, to constantly be on guard, to think critically, and to separate the author's real, intelligent voice from the narrator's loud, distracting, idiotic noise. Which leaves us with one last big question. Swift was worried about the commercial hawks and the mindless trend followers of his day. But what about ours? In a world just saturated with anonymous social media accounts, AI-generated articles, and an endless fire hose of superficial hot takes, Swift's 300-year-old challenge feels more urgent than ever. How do we tell the difference between the real author and the mask?